How's it going, guys? My name's Splice tonight and welcome back to Reflections. I know it's been a little while that we haven't really had the most stable of content coming out lately, and for that I'd like to apologize. Part of that is just my real life has been getting crazy and hectic and really busy, but that shouldn't really affect the content that I get out to you guys as much as it has been lately. So for that, again, I'd like to apologize. But moving on past that right now, let's talk about the topic of the day, Wonder Woman. Okay, so if you guys have seen the show Reflections, you'll already know that myself, Splice Knight, as I should have introduced, but anywho, what I do is I take concepts, ideas, and I sort of break them down. Now, for this particular video, we'll be taking the concept that Wonder Woman, spoilers by the way, if you haven't already seen the movie, go do that. I really do recommend it. It's a fantastic film. And today we're going to be actually looking at the general philosophy and ideas behind Wonder Woman. Now, an interesting fact is it's actually, the original concept was developed by a man who had this idea of women that they were perfect. They were the balance out for men in the sense that men were corruptible. They had this issue with violence. They had this issue with destructive tendencies, and women kind of balanced it out and made things better, but they were also superior.
It is our sacred duty to defend the world. And it's what I'm going to do.
He had this sort of superiority attitude. But the interesting thing is that it made it into this, they have to be the guiding force, the guardians, or the people who help safeguard the world of men. And that's really interesting because at Themyscira, which is where Wonder Woman is actually from, it's all females. They're all Amazons. And so going into the movie, starting this, you kind of have the origin story of Wonder Woman, where you kind of see her develop, and the main thing that I really wanted to talk about today, this video, is her kind of, the way she has adapted growing up, and how she applies it later on. So, in a lot of the film, she's kind of being told, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this, you know, you're just a child, you're just this, you're just that, you're a girl, you're a woman. Whatever the case may be, you're not an Amazon necessarily, so you shouldn't go out and do this. Now, this kind of is more seen in the beginning, a little bit evidently, but it is very clear throughout the entire movie that everyone is trying to tell her not to do something. And the beautiful thing about Wonder Woman is that she would essentially hear them out and then completely do the opposite. She would generally, if they were saying, hey, stay here, don't do this, it's not safe, she would immediately go and do that anyway because she deemed from her perspective that it was necessary and important to do so. Now, the other thing that makes this really interesting is, for example, when she's a kid, her mother, the Queen of Themyscira, actually says, I don't want you to train, I don't want you to get stronger and learn and basically become the goddess that I know you will be. And despite this, Diana says, you might think that, but I'm going to go to the best Amazon trainer, your sister, to actually get my instruction for fighting and being in command of the gifts that we have as Amazonian women. That being their incredible fighting skills, their skills with a bow, their skills with a sword and shield, which you see throughout the film. But the interesting thing is she rejects what her mother says and she decides to go out and define herself by what she chooses and what she thinks is interesting.
If you choose to leave, you may never return. Who will I be if I stay? If no one else will defend the world, then I must.
She's seen right in the beginning of the film even rebelling against someone who's supposed to be watching her. She's clearly running away. Even to get away from them, she tries to jump off a massive cliff, which she would have been able to survive because she's got superhuman durability, but at the time, it's not necessarily established that she's able to do that. That being said, you keep seeing all these instances, and later on, when she gets older, she continues to disobey those who tell her, no, you can't do this, no, you shouldn't do this, you should be this, this is you.
I do not deserve you.
You've told me this story.
And anyone who tried to put her in a box, whether it was her male companion that she ended up finding after besting the best of the Amazons and becoming, or starting to become who she is, Wonder Woman, she ends up finding a man, first man on Themyscira. So it's a very odd occurrence. But what she does, she goes up to him, finds him, everyone wants to ostracize him. She says, no, fuck that, I'm going to bring him in because I think it's important. This is clearly a sign that Hades, who is the main antagonist of the film, or the target of the angst and aggression that Diana has, because she's trying to keep the world balanced. From her perspective, that is the way to do it, is to deal with Hades directly. Now, she is being brought up to think that this god killer weapon, her sword that she has throughout the majority of the film, is what's going to make a difference. Now, we learn later on in the film that that's not the case. However, the interesting thing is that her pursuit and her being able to constantly go against what people keep telling her, whether or not it is her male companion saying, stay here, you don't understand the world of man's politics.
I believe that this war should stop. Help me stop it right now.
Why we're doing certain things, she would still go out and say, well, that's crazy. I don't think that makes any sense. I'm going to do this anyway because it makes sense to me, and because it makes sense to me, I'm going to find a way to actually pave my own way. It's actually demonstrated when she's in the war room with a bunch of the generals from the war effort in England, and she actually says, hey, you guys are trying to figure this out. It's a book that her friend had found, but she looks at it and she says, I can read this. I know hundreds of languages. I can read everything that's here. Because of that, because she was able to speak out and speak her mind, she ends up getting an audience with a group of people, providing a lot of information, and being an invaluable asset to this endeavor that they're going forward on. Now, obviously, when she finally does get to deal with the main issue, that being these gas attacks and the perpetrator supposedly behind it, that being Ares, in the context of the way that the film sets it up, it seems like her going against it might actually be an issue. However, it's shown that when she finally does slaughter him, even though, spoilers by the way, I did mention that at the beginning, when she does finally defeat this Ares, it turns out that that's not him. However, it is only a pawn in the scheme, but you realize that humans are not as good as she had thought. And that was kind of a shaking moment for her, and you almost see her falter, and when people are starting to tell her, no, this is the way things are, no, this is the way things are, you start to see in that moment where she was wrong. She didn't realize that it was someone else. It wasn't Hades. It wasn't who she expected, who she could one-hit kill and defeat and just diffuse the war effort. When that didn't end up actually happening, she went through a short period of doubt. But when she started being told again and again, she realized that even though this might be partially true, that humans aren't necessarily as good as she thought they were, which is a whole nother tangent, which I'll get to in a second. But when she realized this, she almost gave in. She almost started going to the status quo, the idea of what everybody else thought. But then, when she realized that the person that had been with her was also trying to show that humanity is different and they have to have a choice, and yes, there's good and evil in everyone, and it's just kind of deciding which path you take, she decides, I'm going to now ignore what people keep telling me I have to do again, and I'm going to win the day. And that ends up carrying her all the way to the end of the movie, where she, again, is breaking the norm, she's breaking the mold, she continues to be her own person, and it's benefited her every step of the movie. So, in a sense, the entire overarching idea of Wonder Woman is don't let someone tell you what to do, be your own person, and don't let what other people expect to be what they socialize as the constraints of the world stop you in any fashion. But anyway guys, that's just my thoughts on the matter. What do you guys think? Let me know what you guys thought of the idea and the philosophy of Wonder Woman. The idea that nobody can put you down, nobody can hold you down, and you define who you are based on your actions as opposed to these ideas of certain individuals and certain societies. Don't let socialized norms tell you what you can or cannot do. Anyway guys, that's just me, my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. With that said guys, thank you so much for watching, and Splice Night out.